Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4.
Hello.
I'm putting my hands up like you guys can see me. My camera is not working tonight, so I am just vocally here.
So it's the Hermanubis that will be emanating your spirit in this voice.
Yes. I'm glad you noticed what it was. I'm glad you noticed what it was. I love this image of Anubis. It's actually a statue that's in the Vatican. It's one of my favorites of him. I thought it would be fitting for tonight because I'm sure at some point we'll be talking about pilgrimages to the Vatican and pilgrimages to Egypt and Rome and all those things. So I thought it was a great fitting thing. And like I said, that's one of my favorite depictions of
Yay. So we're talking about some of my favorite places. Let's go. I'm ready.
So
I got my coffee. I got my cafe. Ciao, bello, ciao. Let's go.
There he goes. Now Alex is jumping there for a minute. It's kind of odd. We had again little connecting issues with live stream. So let me open up that chat, make sure that's working. If it's there, just type in hello so that we know that you're there and all that fun stuff. Oh, look, there's an Alex behind an Alex.
Seeing double.
Hello, Alex.
Do a little dance.
Jiggy with it.
We're live, making a little love. So, Alex, where are you? Because you're not home.
I'm not home. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, for Parliament of World Religions. It's my first time. It was a year in advance that it was Reverend Don Lewis of the Correllians that invited me, and Laurie Blackman actually guided me through all the steps to register for Parliament, and this is how it happened. Nice. And now I'm here, and it's going to be wonderful. Tomorrow there's an ecumenical parade.
A parade? Wow.
A parade, yes. So it's the coming of churches, and obviously it's interfaith. So it's polytheism as well as monotheism.
I hope they all play nice together.
He's going to get some provisions.
I hope it doesn't turn into a WWE SmackDown, Agora 320 BC, AD.
So, yeah.
Now I know you said
hopefully the Dalai Lama will be here. Can you hear me with the Bluetooth or no?
What?
Wow, no.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, I'll turn you down on my
Okay, good. I'd rather have the Bluetooth. So the Dalai Lama to many other personalities will be here. So I imagine it's going to be at the convention center. It's huge, this facility. Just the Marriott Marquis alone, it's 5 years old hotel, but then it's connected to the Sheraton and every other hotel here. And then there's a huge convention center. So I'll be taking my walks with the Cabot robe.
So you're there representing the Cabots, huh?
I'm representing the Cabot tradition, of course. So this is going to be, I'm the first of the Cabots to be here. So looking forward to meeting even Selena Fox.
Wow, nice. Get some pictures or it didn't happen.
I'll get my favorite, the reels, right? I'll make videos and make reels.
Well, I'm sure Alex wouldn't make a pilgrimage to Chicago. I mean,
well, it's the Parliament, so here in Chicago. So I think that it's a wonderful opportunity as clergymen, a priesthood of the goddess. Within my priesthood of the goddess, so to be here in that faith and that representation with the tradition, with the Cabot tradition as well.
Well, congratulations, bravo!
Thank you.
Buona fortuna. I hope it's a successful weekend ahead.
Una gran experiencia. So it's a great experience for anyone who's going to be here at Parliament.
It sounds fun. I mean, they've been doing it for a couple of years now, right?
They've been doing it. They've been doing it for a couple of years. It started in the '70s. If I read the history of Parliament of World Religion, it started in the '70s through the Arch Diocese, I think. It started obviously with the Christian faith, and then it grew into all the Abrahamics, and now all the polytheistic faiths as well.
Cool.
Let them play nice. Remind them to play nice, because they sometimes can get a little.
I don't know. I'll experience it. That I don't think that we're here as spiritual representatives, spiritual leaders. I think that that's important.
There was the time that Lady Olivia from the Fellowship of Isis went to represent ISISM, and she showed them the right way to do things, and it was very unfortunate that some of the boys just didn't play very nice, and in the end, she prevailed. But
She
do your
should.
thing, be confident.
She's a dedicated lady, and of course I'm here within my own priesthood of the goddess, and this is who I am, and it doesn't matter because there's going to be a lot more people. We have our own chapter. There is a division where it's paganism,
Mhm.
and under that umbrella, not only Hinduism, Buddhism, the whole Wicca is represented by the chairman is Phyllis Karat.
I'm really I'm taken back and surprised that the Buddhists and the Hindus even allowed themselves under the banner of paganism. I know sometimes that can be a very iffy ground for them as well too, depending on what part of the world they're from.
Identification, I think they do it through identification labeling. Under one umbrella of
Mm, interesting.
polytheism. So I imagine that it would be they're considered, Hinduism,
Probably
Buddhism.
the main umbrella is probably polytheistic, and then paganism falls under that, and then breaks down from there. It might be that way because
It breaks down from there, but there is that umbrella of paganism.
But you know what? Find out for yourself. But it could be an interesting conversation to
But
have with
it could be an
some of them.
interesting conversation, and you know what? This is about education for myself.
Right.
As I grow, I evolve. This is for myself.
Right.
Not only to hobnob with the elders,
Right.
but as well as to learn how do they compartmentalize this? How
Right.
do they teach
Right.
it?
This is why I brought it up
I
to
will
you.
learn maybe I'll learn other denominations.
That's why I brought it up to you. Talk to them about it. It's very fascinating because something Eddie just said, it tends to be the Westerners compartmentalize the Hindus and the Buddhists into the paganism banner because that seems to make sense for the Westerners. But a lot of the Hindus and a lot of the Buddhists from the East don't like to be considered that,
right,
because of their belief systems.
Yeah, because
And
paganism is pagani, and it's mostly Western labeling.
right. That's why. So that's what I'm saying. Talk to them about it. Extend the olive branch. Hear their side of it. It's very interesting. It's very
Oh, it
fascinating.
will be interesting. Like this. Who's was his name David Shu, Eddie? Who taught us about shamanism? Actually, was that term is more from the Eastern
yes, that was David.
theology rather than the Western.
Yep, that was David Shee. He's got 2 books out. He's been on the show. I love him. We talk.
He's amazing man, amazing priest.
He's on my. We connected because he's on my bandwagon and stopped using shamanism when it comes to what anthropologically people consider shamanism. And the animism and things like that.
Animism, yeah, the new term.
Right, the spiritual followings of animism within indigenous cultures, to stop using shamanism because that was labeled on by anthropologists, white anthropologists, to describe the practices of that. But the term itself, the name, actually comes from, I forgot the tribe, but it's a
Eastern roots.
yeah, it's got Eastern Siberian roots.
Siberian. I was going to say, I thought it
Siberian,
was
yeah,
Russian. I thought
Eastern
it was
Siberian
up
roots,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, and when he's on that to try to teach people not to use that term, because it's actually disrespectful to his background and things like that. And I've always said that for a long time. So that's
How did he explain that it becomes disrespectful?
Well, because it's a specific word for them, and it was taken because of them. Back then, I think it was between the 1920s to the 1940s. I don't remember 100%. When anthropologists, went and visited the tribe and things like that, that name stuck. Like it's a word that's theirs, and for him, using it, especially during the New Age movement during the 70s, and it coming out, and everybody's shamanistic, and be a shaman, and Indians are all shamans, like all that kind of stuff. It overshadowed his culture, and that he feels that it took away from the education and the information about that culture, utilizing it for other things, and especially South American. Where you go now, especially it's tourism. You go down and you spend time with the shaman,
Right.
and that's a specific title that is given and used within that Eastern Siberian tribe, that is special. And it's become such a thing. And South Americans are making money off of it, which he feels.
Does anybody throw out a suggestion or suppose what is allowed to be said in English then? Because it's would it be medicine man? Would it be
no? His suggestion
leader?
Is using the actual culture's word,
right?
For that.
Which is
every culture has their own. That's what the problem is.
They do, but then sometimes English is such an amalgam of multiple languages that had to borrow languages all over the world borrow from each other if they don't have a specific one root word for a specific thing.
That comes back to what we were saying before, as how Westerners like to put everything into a label. Like we have to make it easier, make it palatable. Just like the term Wicca. It's used. It was basically used and thrown into things, to make it palatable for Westerners.
But do we need to blame the publishing companies for that then? Because
in some ways, yeah,
the publishing companies that really took ownership of that word and really sold it heavily with
absolutely. I mean, it was
anything they stamped Wicca
did.
on, they put a 5-pointed star, and all of a sudden, it was.
Well, they sensationalized it. They took a word that was not meant to represent modern day witchcraft, and now it's federally recognized under that term.
Right, and that's why it was used. Dorian Valiente was actually the one of the few in the beginning who did use the term Wicca, because witchcraft, as Gerald wanted it to be called, take back that name witchcraft, and he wanted it was called witchcraft. But that was still a scary word back then. So using that term Wicca, which came from Gerald, but he didn't use it that often. And
it was used to label an organization, WICA. And that's how knowing that this is Anglo-Saxon roots of Wicca with an A and Wicca with an E.
Right.
And so the term pertaining female and male, and that's the whole etymology of the word, obviously.
Right. But it got used as a palatable word instead.
But because the centuries of witchcraft being perversed by Catholicism, by Christianity, and through all the other denominations, you know, they thought it would be nice to use Wicca, a bubble gum term, and it stuck. And that modern day movement of witchcraft then had Wicca
Right.
Well, didn't
as
a lot of it have to do with that until like the late 50s anyway? Witchcraft was still on the books
Yep.
in
Yeah.
England as illegal, so they probably
51
really
in
couldn't use the
51
word.
in 51 witchcraft, not Wicca. The Wicca didn't
Right.
even exist.
Yeah.
Witchcraft, yes, until 1951. It was repelled in England, and you know, and Gardner was one of the ones that actually made his book High Magic Aid, which
Hmm.
was fiction,
Right.
nonfiction. And right, Eddie, not nonfiction.
Well, it was so it
In
was
order to for him to come out as an author,
yeah. It was written as fiction,
fiction.
supposedly with explaining, things that went on within the New Forest and his beginnings and things like that. Again, this is still up for debate at this point.
I'm very proud to say I have the original book. I have the
Nice.
original book from the 1950s, and that was the first one that he placed out there with you know, he was worried. He was worried to be an author because he was revealing
Couldn't write.
that sort of, you know, modern day movement of witchcraft. And then, of course,
Right.
it was repelled in 1951, and by that time, he was able to write the second book, which was Witchcraft Today.
Right. Yeah. But that was the thing. He still wanted it, witchcraft. But as things progress and things this, and they have to make it more palatable for people, and especially during the New Age movement. During the '70s, it really needed that push. This is where all that love and light stuff. So the thing with with that, the New Age movement
Well,
really.
the flower power movement of the late 60s and early 70s, obviously that was a movement of equality, the grassroots of our revolution for the LGBTQ, and women's rights, civil rights. So that whole movement, obviously there was that subculture of witchcraft, and uh, Gardner then, you know, there's so many hived off, creating Alexandrian,
Right. And
obviously Alexanders and all that.
Alex
So
really marketed on that flower power movement. During that,
correct.
he's the one that.
During that time.
Yeah. Which brings me to a question, being that we're talking about New Age stuff, and it just came out of this whole Lionsgate thing. I'd like your opinions. When we bring Yeshe on too, I'd love for her to chime in.
Enlighten me,
Yes,
enlighten me
we
on this.
summon you. We summon you. We summon you.
So the Lionsgate, it's supposed to reach its max on.
Do you mean the
8th.
The movie studio production house?
No, the Lionsgate portal. It is an astrological event.
Right.
That's called the Lionsgate.
Lionsgate. Let's talk about
what's happening now?
Let's
Yes, tell us. Yes, let's bring Yeshe on.
So, no, let's. I want to bring this on first, and then we'll bring Yeshe.
I'm not accustomed. I didn't know about this Lionsgate.
I mean,
Lionsgate has a lot to do with. It has been oversold in rave culture because they do a lot of raves or EDMs now.
Do they?
Festivals around it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot to do with Sirius, the star rising on the horizon, which would be the ancient Egyptian New Year when the Nile would rise, and it would be the flood of tears of Isis. As Isaias is, in Isism, we celebrate this. You can do it twice a year if you wanted to. There's a couple of different dates with it, but it would be around the height of it should be around August 15th, and this is the height of it, and this would be the ancient Egyptian New Year. And what would happen is I even have it in my star card in my tarot deck that I have the priestesses or the witches of Hecate taking on the ghostly apparitions of the accoutrements of Hecate, pouring forth the waters of the Nile, which then flow into the urns of the temperance card, the mermaid, and it all connects. And in the star card, I have the astrological constellation of Leo. So it's almost Leo at its height, like right before it's about to start to descend. It's perfectly aligned with the Sphinx and the pyramids, and it creates the Lion's Gate. It is a perfect
Okay.
on the horizon. It is the perfect view that opens up the portal of the heavens for the gods to sort of be reborn. I mean, this is really hodgepodge. It's so much more than that, but
it's pretty much romanticized.
Yeah.
No, well, the modern thing might be a little romanticized because of these new bacchanals and dynastic rites of these EDMs and raves, and it just seems to be a really cool seller to get together in the desert somewhere in California and throw on a rave because the Lion Gate portal is open. Manifest to your heart's content.
Well, yeah,
and this kind of thing.
That's just it. I mean, it's really found, it's funny how it's made its way into, the witchcraft world,
right.
But it is a new age thing.
Yeah.
Yes, there are things that are connected with it. And you gave a little bit more of the spiritual Egyptian side type of thing, but when you go and look, it's funny because, I hate it. I can't stand it. It's just, we have to manifest this and this.
Right.
The stories are crazy. I mean, I was looking it up, and the reason why I asked this because I'm doing an article with it, and some of the crazy things is like the lizard aliens are coming. Mm-hmm. Manifest your life, the
reptilians.
Yes.
The sad part of it is a beautiful ancient festival, and until they built the Aswan Dam that moved the entire
temple
direction of the Nile. The Nile should flood at this point now. And especially in Icism, this is a very important, very powerful festival. And, it should be jubilation. It should be fun. So there should be celebration involved. Not everything has to be so solemn and so boring like cults and ancient Hammer films from the 1970s. But the one thing that I agree with you, though, Eddie, is that what I don't like is the capitalization of it, like so many other things here in the 21st century, is that all of a sudden it's about manifest junk you want. First, I'm going to put out a prayer for world peace. And then if I do that, I'm going to get all the stuff I want. But this is what happens when metaphysics bleeds into the mainstream and floods and gets poisoned. People then want to write checks to the universe for money. Right. Then all of a sudden people want to manifest stuff for themselves, and it gets messy. And then we wonder, is there in the astral realm above us right now a war going on because the people who used to handle sage have one bundle of sage for what, a year, 2 years, right, is now burning through them at unprecedented rates per week. Mm-hmm. And now there's all this abuse of metaphysics because the mainstream wants stuff. Now they figured out, well, if I become a witch, I can magically make stuff up here. So it makes you start to wonder what's in the ether right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot,
a lot of reefer.
A lot of reefer. I mean, maybe they do better if there was a lot of reefer. No, I just found, in doing this, it was really interesting because, there are ties with the Egyptians and the new year, basically, but with the New Age people, where they grabbed it from, and it's so bizarre. It really is. But this whole real Lionsgate thing is actually a product of the 90s. Like the actual 8/8 thing is a product of the 90s based off of misinformation from the 40s. It's crazy. And it really does go down to aliens. And where it all started from is this book that came out in the 70s called The Serious Mystery.
Serious Mystery.
Who took Robert Temple, who took these old anthropological things from the 30s and made up this whole crazy thing, and it blew up. It just blew up within the New Age world. So technically, what people are considering this Lionsgate doesn't exist.
But here's the thing: when we start talking about that era and the things that came from it,
Oh my God.
everybody from Anton LaVey and down, they were all fiction writers, and
Right.
then all of a sudden they became the leaders of the occult and metaphysics.
Right.
So there was a lot of like King Arthur, medieval fantasy,
Yeah.
Hammer films.
Fantasy.
There was a lot of
They wanted to try. They had to validate themselves. That's really what it came down.
well, there was no one to tell them otherwise, because all of that stuff was very taboo still in the 60s
Right.
and 70s. You know, like the only people really into New Age metaphysics and stuff were really hippies, and nobody cared what they had to say because mainstream culture thought they were nuts to begin with. And so when they all traded in their hippie vans for SUVs and family vans in the 80s, and then swore they didn't do drugs and conceived their children in the late 70s in some witchy circle in the woods, and now they traded in all that goblets and velvet robes for, you know, crystals and yoga because now they lived in the suburbs and they had to look, you know, acceptable.
Yes.
And, you know, I always have this argument with people about this. I'm like, I think this is really funny because in the late 90s, when I came into the New Age scene, I had absolutely no idea what I was seeing. Spiritual practice, folk magic, religion, it was a completely different thing where I came from. And then when I saw this manufactured Californian dreamscape of stuff, I was just like, why do you need so much stuff to be spiritual? Why do you need a $45 tarot deck? Jeez, we just got playing cards in the drawer, you know? And it was pretty wild, but it was, these hippies turned into yuppies.
Mhm.
But they still wanted to hold these beliefs, but they polished them off, and it turned into this Lionsgate kind of stuff.
You know, one person who could probably comment on the California scene is Yeshe, who's waiting in
So
our.
bring her on.
Bring her
All
on.
of this that what you're saying is gobbledygook. So bring her on.
Don't worry, Alex. We'll get there. Everybody will have their time to shine. So just to inform everybody, with Yeshe Matthews is a Mandala priestess. I'm going to try to read this. Mandala priestess of the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple and owner of the Sacred Well Metaphysical Shop in Dunsmuir. Could be saying it wrong, California. Yeshe has dedicated her life to female mysteries and the sacred healing practices, with ongoing study and practices in Tibetan Buddhism, Siberian Mongolian shamanism. When we were just talking about that. Ifa, Mayan cosmology, herbal healing, and Dianic goddess spirituality. With a master's degree in women's history from Sarah Lawrence College in New York, she has studied women's mysticism, shamanism, and matriarchal communities for over 25 years. She maintains a public shrine to Kuan Yin that is visited by thousands of people each year. She is a professional diviner for over 20 years and has performed more than 1,500, or is that 15,000? 15 readings. She also takes people on small group pilgrimages, which is our topic for tonight: spirituality and pilgrimages to holy sites of the ancient world. I think she's going over to Egypt soon. I saw some posts there. Jealous. This year, her journeys include Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey. So, if I believe she's ready because she's there, I'm going to bring her on. Yes. Welcome to This Old Witch.
Thank you so much. I was back in the green room, totally delighted listening to your conversation. I have so much to say. Can I just take like 4 minutes?
Go for it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to kick back with my coffee. Let's hear it.
All right. So first of all, David She, I love him. He's fantastic. I've been following his work for years, and he's actually landed in Mongolia today to go on pilgrimage.
Oh, wow.
So let's send him a little good energy while he's there in Mongolia, studying the shamanic ways there. That's one. Number two, yes, the spiritual materialism, the California scene, the new age thing. I'm so with you on this. A lot of people think I'm New Age because I tend to just be friendly to all paths and I try to meet people where they are. And I'm interested in lots of different things. But this Lion's Gate thing is really interesting because there actually is an ancient Lion's Gate. If you look on my Facebook, I
In
posted a
Jerusalem,
photo
right?
of myself at it. It's in Turkey,
Okay, it's
in Hattushas. It is the seat of the Hittite Empire.
yep.
The people who were running, the Hittite people who were running their ancient mystery school out of Hattushas, crafted two giant carved stone gates that were for initiatory ritual purposes. And they're on top of a hill. And so what you do I've been there, I was there last year, you walk up this hill and through a tunnel that's bored all the way through the hill to get to the back. So you go through the darkness to get to the backside, and then you go up a set of stairs and you first pass through the Lion's Gate. And that Lion's Gate is perched on a side of a hill in such a way that the sun would have risen directly on it in about July of every year. And then you go up higher to the Sphinx Gate. And then there's two women. It's a gate with two female sphinxes. And you go through there and then you come down. And it's proposed that this would have been an initiatory ritual, that you would have gone into the darkness, come out, been rebirthed into the sun between the lions, mustered your energies, mustered your courage to go stand between the two sphinxes and receive whatever information you needed to receive. So that's one. And then the second thing that's interesting about the Lion's Gate that also tracks back to ancient Turkey is at Mount Nemrut, which is in historical Armenia. So it's now it's now known as Turkey, but in ancient times, it was a very interesting place. Mount Nemrut had a king. His name was King Antiochus. And King Antiochus, in about 100 BCE, decided he was going to create an incredible mountaintop sanctuary to the gods where there were carved stone statues both on the eastern facing side of the mountain and the western facing side of the mountain. And the deities he put up there were a combination of the Zoroastrian, Greek, and traditional Armenian deities. He wanted to create at Mount Nemrut a kind of a utopian civilization where everybody got along because those were warring peoples at the time. There's a lot of conflict. So he put up like a statue that's known as Zeus Oromastes and or Zeus Ahuramazda. And then there's Hercules Vagan, which is like a Herculean, but also Armenian deity. Then there's Apollo Mithras Mir. And he named these gods with all the names. And he was trying to show that these cultures that had been at war actually were all worshiping the same gods. And he put himself up there because he was kind of a megalomaniac at the same time. He put a statue of himself up there too, among the gods. And what's there that's really exciting, well, it's not there anymore now. It's a really sad story. It's like a lost ark type story where it used to have the most ancient horoscope ever known to man was a carved relief of the constellation of Leo with a few other planets and stars around it that astronomers were able to look at the arrangement that was carved into the lion horoscope of Mount Nemrut, and they could tell from that carving, looking at the astronomical record, that carving was made in somewhere in July, about 109 BCE. And it just so happens that that was the summer that King Antiochus ascended the throne. And on the eastern side of the mountain, they have the statues facing the rising sun. And on the western side of the mountain, they have the same set of statues facing the setting sun. And the way that the alignment goes, the sun is actually directly above the eastern statues, coming directly at them at July, around July, mid-July, and would have been mid-July, about 109 BCE. And the setting sun is right about winter solstice of that same year, which was King Antiochus's birthday. And so he
leave it to a Capricorn.
Right. He created this monument and dated it around himself because he saw himself as the God on earth who was going to bring together all of these warring cultures and bring an end to strife by showing them that the sun rose and set on the same set of gods. And so when we get to talking about this like new age, like rave in the desert, Lion's Gate, manifest your thing, whatever, I'm so with you because I'm like, we can talk about the Lion's Gate, but let's talk about it intelligently. Like we can talk about the Lion's Gate, but let's talk about Hattushas. Let's talk about Mount Nemrut. Let's talk about also how that ties in with the struggle for Armenian independence.
I'm with you for that. Yeah.
How, and so when we get into these things, I'm like, yes, of course. Like it's, of course, we're in the time of Leo and, of course, the rising of the dog star and all that's happening, which I think is so interesting, Alex, that you're in Chicago today and that you're there.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't know.
Yeah. Sirius has been rising over the United States since about 2 weeks. And it visible on the eastern horizon in the early evening. And it was visible in California like about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And as of today, it's visible in Chicago today. And next week, right around the dark of the moon, it'll start to be visible on the East Coast. So I'm all for us talking about like things like Lion's Gate. I'm here for the reptilian reefer. If you can show me that it has an ancient root, if you can show me the carvings, take me into a cave and show me the thing, I'm here for it. But I think a lot of what you were saying before, like people want to belong to something and they want to feel special and they want to feel in desperate times, like they have somewhere they can go to ask for what they need. And I get that, but I think that the spiritual materialism that is so inherent in our capitalist framework, not that I'm against people making money or running their businesses, but I think our framework is such that people immediately, it's almost like they have an appetizer of some spirituality and they want to shit out a hustle immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels a little bit overwhelming when you see the scope of how much that's happening right now. And I think probably some old schoolers like us sit back and feel a little curmudgeonly about that. I do.
Good word. Yes.
I get a little like, about it, but I kind of I've had to just be like, okay, I'm going to get my Gen Z brain on and I'm going to be like, hey, rave in the desert. And did you hear about Hattushas? Like, I mean, kind of try to join it. I don't know.
Yeah, with all the places that you go, putting together these pilgrimages. I won't forget it. You know what I mean? Do you get a lot of those people like that are seeking that empty spiritualism to go for the? Okay.
I don't. The reason is I don't on purpose. I don't. I actually get a lot of people who are like me. They're interested in the history. They have maybe been devoted to a goddess or a god for a number of years, and they feel that this is their big chance to go and make a life-changing devotional pilgrimage. I started going on pilgrimage seriously. I mean, I've gone and I had done like some spiritual travel before 2014, but in 2014, I went on what I felt was like a life-changing spiritual pilgrimage. I went with my Lama to Tibet, to central Tibet, to the birthplace of Yeshe, to Samye, which is the most ancient Buddhist temple complex in Tibet. Obviously went to Lhasa. We, went to the sites of the Nyingma tradition. And while I was there, it was so hard. It was so hard. I can't even tell you. I mean, the altitude sickness, the being in a rickety bus, even though we had a great driver and it was wonderful, but like not paved roads, rickety buses like going sideways, bouncing for 9 hours through the countryside, yaks, and it was amazing and it was life-changing. And when I came back from that pilgrimage, I had this awareness that if I'm not bringing something there, I have no business going there. So if I'm only going to get something, I have no business being there. It's extractive at best. So I started to condition the way that I do pilgrimage. Like I had people say to me, "What do you think you're going to Tibet to get?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I think I've got something to bring there." And in fact, I did, because after I went on that pilgrimage, I helped raise $60,000, and there was a huge refurbishment of the temple there.
Mhm.
And at the birthplace of Yeshe, the first female Buddha of Tibet. And everywhere I go, I bring that. So when people want to travel with me, I usually have them fill out I mean, the way I describe the trips, it's like very clear. We're going to be doing historical things. We're going to be looking for ways to be of service. And then I have everyone fill out a questionnaire. They have to interview. And I only take people who are really serious. I think if anybody just wants to go for like a lark, they should absolutely just figure that out and go with like a regular tourist agency. But if what they want is to go and have a transformational experience and make genuine friends and actually get to know the culture and sink into the customs and work on cultural competency, which is a constant work in progress as a Westerner, then they're going to love my trips.
That's wonderful.
You sold me. I'm ready to sign up. Let's go.
Wait, I've got one spot left for Turkey. Everything is full. Egypt is full. Jordan is full. I did decide to do a little jaunt since I'm over there. We're going to do Delphi and Meteora. I've done Delphi before, but I've never been to Meteora before. And I'm so ready to go feel that and do that energy. I feel like there's something there that I need, and I need to activate something there as well. And then Turkey. I mean, Turkey, I would live there. I would live there.
Wow, yes. I can't wait.
Oh,
That's the calling Huda Mazda,
yes.
and that's something that has been such a driving force for me as a kid
Yes.
in
Oh
my
my
young
gosh.
years. Yeah.
The there's so many layers. And when you get to a place, just like in the United States, you've got your indigenous people who were there the whole time.
Mhm.
And then you've also got multiple layers of waves of people who have come in and they've brought all their traditions. So like when we're in Turkey, it's like Greco-Anatolian, nomadic, it's a little bit of everything. But the indigenous Turkish nomadic people who ran the caravanserai, the caravan hotels, where nomads would come, post up for the night, they'd bathe, they'd feast, they'd get a little rest, they could water their animals. Those people who were doing that for thousands of years are still doing that today. Their descendants still do that. Best hospitality you'll ever receive in the world is to be welcomed
True.
by an indigenous Turkish person in their caravanserai style hotel or restaurant, because it's at this point, it's genetic to them to be hospitable. And it's a spiritual practice. Hospitality as a spiritual practice, welcoming the stranger as a spiritual practice. So it's a complete privilege, a complete privilege.
I have a question. Do you do also the whole Sufism? Do you go through that ideology of Sufism?
Yes, there are two places that I go for that in Turkey, and
Hmm.
in the future there may be other places that I add to that list. But so far, um, there's a wonderful organization in Cappadocia, in eastern Turkey, where they have those big fairy stones, beautiful land formations, and the organization, a cultural organization there, does traditional Sufi whirling, and they explain about the 7 levels of ascension that are
Hmm.
associated with
Hmm.
dervish whirling. It is complicated because it's mostly for men, but there are women Sufi practitioners who also do the whirling in all parts of the world. It's just
Beautiful.
that, it's certain places it's going to be more male dominated, and so this one happens to be, but they're great. And I usually go and see them, and we see a Sufi presentation. They don't allow you to camera, take pictures or film during the actual ritual, which I
Sure.
love. But afterwards they will put on, they'll do like a little, like, one song and a little demonstration, and you're allowed to photograph the demonstration afterwards. It's very respectful. And the other place that I went last year that is now really important is it's called Hasi Bektash, and it is one of the main Sufi seats, places where they have their elders bear, entombed in the temple. And so you walk in, it's beautiful, of course. Muslim art is so beautiful, geometric, the tiling and the sacred geometry.
Yes.
And you walk in, of course, take your shoes off, you've got to wash your face, and you go in, and then you go through kind of like a little narrow couple corridors where you can see examples of how they would live, and their kitchens and the meditation rooms. And then you actually go into the sanctuary. And there's nothing that can prepare you, honestly, for walking into a sanctuary lined with coffins. And the coffins each have, it looks like a sail. It's not a sail, but it's a drape that has a point on it, and it's all toward, and it's the same reason why some Muslim women, when they wrap their heads, they'll pinch a little point right here. It's ascension. It's an ascension symbol. And so you can see these coffins, and it's so interesting because these are people who have died over the last several hundred years, who are entombed in the room with you. They're right there. But the coffins are so small because we're bigger as a race now, humans are, than we were in the past. So many coffins, like taller and, like wider, you know, but the coffins are tiny. And the coffins also, some of them were young people who were there studying and learning, who were extraordinarily talented, gifted, touched by the divine, and then died because mortality rates being what they were. And they're in there, and you walk around, and the energy, it's really hard to explain. The energy is throbbing in that room, in that sanctuary room. And you can get people to give you tours and explain everything to you, and everyone there is really friendly. And we went as a group of non-Muslims, still went inside, and everyone was super friendly, super welcoming, wanted to talk to us, wanted to explain everything. They were kind of like, why did you come here? Like, most non-Muslims don't come here, but it's a whole city built around this place.
True.
And so, yeah, we explore Sufism. As it's a very important aspect, especially in Turkey, of Islam and of mystical, the kind of mystical element that was brought in by the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, their own mysticism.
Yeah,
So it's beautiful.
yeah,
It's
it's
just
really,
just amazing to watch them.
I love it. I mean, it is truly mesmerizing. And when you read about it and you learn about how they believe that ascension happens at these specific 7 levels, and the dance, the whirling, is designed to carry you through those exact 7 levels. It's breathtaking.
It
I had
is.
a
It sounds
wonderful
like it.
experience with a Sufi that came to my friend's dance studio, but we called it the temple. And she's been dancing. How old am I? She's been dancing longer than that. And she's recognized worldwide. And she was able to bring over a Sufi, an whirling dervish. But you were right. I was the only male in the class because all the other attendees and students were female because they were all part of the belly dance troupe, the Middle Eastern dancing troupe. And he didn't mind. I think he liked being surrounded by all the girls, but he wouldn't let them do anything. He was like the puppet master and I was the marionette. I had to get up and do everything he asked. And it was a lot of fun, and he had a great sense of humor. He had a lot of humor and joy into it. And, you know, recently I had a discussion with 2 Greek and an Italian friend of mine about, kind of goes back to the Lion Gate thing, but I'm not going back to that, just as an example of Western interpretation of ecstatic joy, and that they have these pseudo-pagan raves, and they name it after Bacchus all the time and Dionysus, and they tend to think everything has to be about sex and orgy and overindulgence. And we all started sending each other for fun little videos or gifs of Italians and Greeks still having a good time at, I don't know, weddings, funerals, holidays, saint feasts, whatever. And there was the joy. The joy was in the camaraderie. And we're like, this looks fun. Like, you know, to our modern eyes, yeah, who wouldn't want to go to this like pagan EDM in the woods somewhere and like get Hollywood witchy, like where they think it's all that. I'm like, but here amongst the cultures, there's joy. And I think that that's something that so much in the West, not everybody, not, I don't want to pigeonhole everybody, but a lot of people in the West are looking for that ecstatic joy and actually misunderstanding the corruptible ecstasy of it, unfortunately, and they're not getting. And what that Sufi master taught us that time, what he delivered into our lives, I still use to this day. Meditation techniques that involve laughing, the whirling dervish, the spinning, the levels. I mean, I didn't go to the 7 levels. He completely talked about that. That takes a lifetime and life of dedication and devotion. But it was the joy. That's the thing that I've remembered most, that just emanated from him, that this is what this did for him. Even when he wasn't doing it, he was just full of joy, the man.
I think, Foucault writes about this, how repressive cultures give rise to like uncontainedness as a form of joy. And Foucault talks about it in regards actually to homosexual encounters in boys' schools, in Victorian boys' schools, where everything was so regimented as to try to prevent them from masturbating or having sex with each other, and that all that repression ended up having the absolute opposite effect, which was that then they wanted to do that. That's
Right.
all they wanted to do. And the repression of inherent natural joy, which may or may not be sexual, which may or may not be orgiastic, could be, could not be, doesn't have, it's, but the repression of that joy will give rise to exactly the thing that the repression is trying to control. Whereas in what you're describing, which I just love, when the natural joy is just allowed to well up and bubble up freely, then what ends up happening is, you find joy in mopping the floors together,
Right.
in washing the wheat together, in picking the roses for the enfleurage together,
Right.
in, walking the cloth together. There's this beauty that's inherent in it, in the naturally arising joy. And I think this is something that we're seeing in our political landscape, which I'm not going to get into more depth, but our political landscape where there seems to be this conflict between repression and license, it's actually like a false argument. We don't actually find joy only in license
Right.
or only in repression.
Right.
It's actually that joy wells up naturally and will pour into whatever the container is that's right in front of it. So then it's up to us to make sure that it's got great containers.
Well put. I like that.
I
So,
believe that that joy becomes pure,
yes.
and that's the reason why it's just infinite joy that you feel within and without.
Yes.
But not easy for everybody to obtain. That's the thing. I think the
Well, it's individualistic. It's an experience that it's only the individual will experience.
but that's what people turn to, uh, the all of it, the witchcraft, magic, new age, any religion. They turn to philosophy to find the component that they're looking for that can't bring them complete joy. Now, the group of
Answers.
us
Though
here,
they look for answers. They look for that, answers within themselves. We always, in medicine, we say, especially when it comes to psychiatrists, psychologists, or even MSWs that are psychotherapists, they're looking for answers for themselves as
right?
well. So this is something that in spirituality as well. So I
But
think I think that that's something that we're experiencing today. We're looking for answers ourselves too.
oh, we certainly are, and that's it. And that's when people would turn to us when it's our turn. That people come in front of us, and we're, you know, where they were led and get to talk to people. But that's from experience. What I see is that people are looking for. They're looking for joy. They're looking for a joy, but they're accidentally finding adrenaline rush
Mm.
and misunderstanding that for ecstatic joy, and
Well,
that
if
becomes complicated.
when it fills the ego, then that's
Right.
something that's
Oh
something else.
yeah, I know, it's that's tough, that's
But
tough.
Yeshe, I see Kuan Yin behind you.
Yes. Yep. This is my practice altar,
Beautiful.
my daily practice.
I wanna just a few moments here just to let you know that I spoke to Lady Rhea. She sends her joy and her love to you
I just love
because she was remembering how you guys, we when we all met at Hexfest, I believe, which is
that's right.
going on as we speak.
I know. I hope they're having
So
a good time there. And I did. It was, oh my gosh, oh, meeting Lady Rhea. Can I tell you? What a rush for me. Total because I love her work. Because back in the I guess early 2000s when I was like living my lesbian witch life, I found her book and she was one of the only ones out there writing out loud and proud about lesbian witchcraft and about the way she writes, the way she presented her candles, the way she presented her traditions, her whole Minoan brotherhood, Minoan sisterhood work. I just was completely mesmerized. And then to finally then after all those years get to meet her, I was so chuffed. And I just love her. Still follow her work, still love everything she does. So please send her my love. I
I
also
will.
send it to her on all our social media.
I
Um,
will. No, definitely. And she's now, overjoyed because of the publishing of her French version of her book.
so
So
great.
that's been amazing.
That is amazing. That is so wonderful. I mean, just such a body of work that it keeps going and finding new pockets of people where it needs to go.
Oh, wonderful. But I love your altar there of Kuan Yin, and just as a little boy, I gravitated to Kuan Yin. There was something that it was such, I guess it's DNA, spiritual DNA.
Yeah. I felt the same way. I actually, growing up, my father was Catholic. My mother was also Catholic, but she had studied Buddhism in college as a philosophy major. And so she was philosophically Buddhist. And so I grew up with like meditation and, she wasn't really deity oriented the way that I am, but very much with Buddhist philosophy, meditation, biofeedback, and like, mindfulness practice. And I remember reading about Guanyin when I was a child and feeling that call. And I had the same call for Aphrodite. Same call. The day I saw the name Aphrodite in front of my eyes, something in me honed in, was like right there with it. And I think you're right. It is a spiritual DNA. And, Guanyin's been with me, and so is Aphrodite, for my whole life. Even when I've dipped in and out of other traditions, I study lots of different traditions. When people, you heard my list before. When people are like, but what's your like religion? I'm like, well, I'm the few things they all have in common. That's what I can say. Like, I study a lot of them. And whatever I find that they actually all have in common, that's my personal religion. And when
what are the commonalities that you find?
Compassion, meeting people where they are and not leaving them where they are. Meeting people where they are, but not leaving them where they are. Patience, devotion for the sake of devotion, not for the sake of receipt, which is what you were saying before.
Yeah.
People doing their, rituals because they feel like they want to get something,
right,
as opposed to just devotion for the sake of devotion, bhakti.
But that for the sake of devotion, sometimes will eventually get you something anyway, but not in that material sense.
Right.
I think that's what separates. It's what separates believers and practitioners. I guess is a way to put it. In the lines of witchcraft, and this is something I just recently saw just before Summer Magic. It's something that I've been saying for a couple of years now. The difference, in using that title witch, and you said it on another podcast with. It's witch with a little w and witch with a big W. And that makes a very big difference. The big W is a title that you work for because of not just practice, but your devotions and, what it entails. It does entail initiations. It does entail devotion and being a devotee to whomever, whatever. But, you do get, it's not just, well, if I light this candle for Aphrodite, I'm going to receive my new boyfriend. You know what I mean? It's not
I'll tell you what, after all these years, you go ahead and light that candle for Aphrodite to send you a boyfriend. I am 100. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on the show.
Yes, you can.
Okay. I am 100% in favor of fuck around and find out in the world of magic, because that's how I think we really learn. I think we got to be out there trying things. And that's one of the reasons I'm not mad at like TikTok witches. I'm not mad at them, because I'm like, you go ahead and light that candle to Aphrodite and see what kind of boyfriend she brings you. And trust that boyfriend will bring whatever lesson you needed so that you can get whole, to have the kind of love that you want to have, to be the kind of love you want to be in the world. But
can I ask you guys this? Eddie brought up an interesting point, and I think it's going to tie in and segue into an earlier conversation and bring things full circle. Words again. The word witch, this is very popularized right now because what it stirs a lot in our present and modern contemporary society is a very many leveled thing. Everything from the Hollywood, conception of witch from all the movies and the TV shows and of our world, of the 20th century that people are familiar with, to the fairy tale witches, to witches in Disney cartoons. But previous to our current time we're living in right now, the word wasn't always perceived in a positive connotation. Now, I know that a lot of people these days like to justify and really bend things and say, oh, but we're dusting it off and redefining it. Now, what happens when this word falls into the category of the word shaman? Because I feel it's kind of going in that direction, because the word wasn't a pleasant thing in a lot of societies. It had nothing to do with Christianity. It had to do with the word to describe something that had magical force, that was darker. I don't want to say evil. That's a little too extreme. But darker. It was an entity. It was a creature. It was a more than a spirit, less than fully whole. It really described something else than what we use the word for now.
Shamanism?
Because what's that?
Shamanism?
No, witch.
Witch.
Because
Oh,
the
witch.
thing is,
Yeah, witch has been perverse throughout the centuries.
no, but it hasn't. It used to be a word that really described something else that has turned into something more pleasant in our day and age, where it used to really describe the words for the things we consider a witch now is not what people of other countries and in different languages would have used that word for. They could have said sorceress, they could have said healer, they could have said there was different words for it. But like the root of that word witch really did. So I'm like, what do you guys think if it starts to flow down the river that way, and then all of a sudden the publishing companies can't sell these thousands of books with this big W word on it, and all of a sudden we have to use the, like Alex, he would be a priest of his religion, like that would be a priest, and you would be a priestess. These words weren't so popular in mainstream because they usually always connected those to something maybe more Christian or Catholic. And so witch became this rebellious term because it was everything those things weren't. But that's not exactly the 100% correct image either. Forgive me, and I'm Aquarius. I love to rock the boat. But I'm curious to know, what do you guys think if what happens, that word witch goes the way of shaman? Then what happens?
I think it should.
Oh,
I think it should.
Okay.
I think it should. I think we should take that back, because it's everything. Every book now is witch this, witch that.
It's oversaturated. The market is oversaturated with so many
has
books.
to do with witchcraft. I think using the term originally, at least within modern contemporary pagan circles, we'll just call it that as an umbrella. It was used in a rebellious way. It's like, oh, I'm a witch, like that type of thing. But, and this is with a lowercase w and the uppercase W, it's our only way, or my only way, and I guess Yeshe as well, to kind of separate the differences between those TikTok witches and initiatory witches and those that put in the damn work and not just light a candle and expecting, something to manifest. There's more than that. Yes, client-wise, yes, I do spells, I do things like that. I don't know when the last time I did anything spell for me. Like my witchcraft is my devotion to my gods, and the work that comes in with that, and the spirits that I work with. That's what it is for me. It's not about lighting that candle and getting that boyfriend or that this or whatever it is that these people do. We should take it back. We have to find a way of taking it back, and we should also take back the word witchcraft as our religion.
But is it taking it back? That's what I'm saying. Like
that's
you can't really take back something that meant, like in the beginning, like something really, really profane and really, really bad. Like not a. Okay,
I agree with what you're saying. No, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
It was Gardner who turned around and said wanted to take it back away from that negative connotation.
But was that the right thing then? Like, was that the correct
Why
word?
not?
Could this have all been something
No.
else if they used a different word? Wicca.
Well, that's why they use that word, you know. And now there's that, you know, the whole thing with there was that.
I'm gonna bring myself to this, you know, questions that you have to pertaining the word witch. I cannot loosely use the word witch in my profession.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a problem. And when I had a problem dealing with discrimination, because there was someone within my team, was Eddie knows a story, was actually telling people, "Oh, stay away from him. He does witchcraft," and you know, using that to scare tactics on the young. And I had to go to HR. This was something very serious for me.
Yes.
And I had to go to HR and tell them I'm a clergyman. I'm actually I hold a priesthood. And I take this seriously. This is my religion. And I had to state that the word, you know, Wicca being a federally recognized religion and so forth. And this, I had to have it documented because this individual, this you know, colleague of mine was being incorrect in being loose with her tongue to say that I was dealing in witchcraft and not get close to me. So there we go with the negative connotations in the 21st century, James.
Right.
So I cannot loosely use the word, you know, witch.
It's not
Still,
like
it
fun
has.
for you.
It's
Yeah.
still, you know, and for them to, you know that I am a practitioner and that I am a minister and so forth, they think that it's all, you know, that I'm loony. You know, it's still there's that ignorance
Yeah.
within professionals out there, and
Right.
not only in medicine but engineering and in law, everything. You have to be very careful.
Right.
Even today.
What I'm saying is if we stand for, if we want to use that word, and you know, we shouldn't, it's like saying, you know, you are Buddhist, and what if Buddhist was used as a bad term?
But Buddhist never started out as a bad term, though.
I feel like if I may,
It depends on if you talk to the Chinese or not.
well,
All right,
have
touche. Sorry, Yeshe, go ahead.
no, I do have a thought on this. I actually feel like we're kind of talking around something that's really powerful about the term witch, which is that it is a it has always fundamentally been transgressive. And the transgressive nature of the word witch is its power. The fact that in ancient times or in, you know, medieval times, it was used to label people that the church felt were either enemies, or that the church felt that their land was so valuable that they wanted to take them out so they could go get it. Then the fact that it's been used to describe feminists, it's been used to describe midwives, it's been used to describe women who were trying to get the vote, it's been used to describe, you know, marches and movements of people who were attempting to get rights and recognized. Then the fact that it is also a legitimate religion and has a legitimate clergy, a devotional path, a priesthood, you know, I feel like, but even in that the legitimate priesthood of witchcraft or of Wicca is still fundamentally transgressive, because it's saying more than just this monotheistic paradigm exists. And we're out here doing it. And we're still doing it, even though you've tried to wipe us out. And we're still doing it, even though you burned us and you drowned us and you stoned us. And we're still here doing it. And we're doing it in public. I feel like I understand that there may need to be, and I don't know how it would be done, honestly. This is not my PR nightmare to handle. But this term is already out of the box. It's going to be out there. It's out of the box. It's going to be used.
Yeah.
But I feel that it's power, the power of the word, just feel it roll off your tongue, witch. It is the power of we are still here and we are still standing up for ourselves.
Let me just
That
use as an example that your passion behind this, I admire completely, and I think that's fat. Oh no, did we lose her?
Yeah, we did.
Oh no, why? What
Love that
happened?
ream stream.
there
Oh,
we
there
go.
she is. Bravo. Okay, she's back.
Oh, great.
We lost you for a second, but we're happy you're
All right,
back.
I know I heard you up until my passion.
Your passion, oh, I admire it completely. It's the wordplay thing, because trust me, if you see on my little green screen right there, there's a 4-letter word that's actually a 5-letter word that I get hell for all the time. So like I said, this is just in talking. In different languages, there was always a better word. In Italian and Greek, there's similar words which would be magio, magaya, which would be he or she that knows magic. And it has a really beautiful connotation. Now, these were the words I always knew growing up, because until Raven Grimassi coined the term stregoria and publicized it through a publishing company and branded it into something that I didn't I loved it because I loved his romanticism, but sometimes I'm like, this is so left field. I don't know where he's going with this. And it intrigued me. So I did dive into it because it got my attention. Because again, where I come from, to call someone a strega is almost like calling them a bitch. Or if you say stragano, like a bastard. Like it wasn't the right, in the actual language, it wasn't what it meant in English. Now, of course, I know we take words and play with them, but some words are taboo and some words are flexible. And this is like the wordplay thing makes me, excited. And so it makes me wonder. And then like that's the Italian. Now, in other parts of the world where uh, witches weren't killed, they weren't burned, like they kind of slid by. That like the whole world didn't have that whole witch burning thing. That was
That's
just
true.
certain parts of like
Yeah.
Western Europe. And so they didn't face that kind of thing, and things just kind of continued as they went. And like the other side of my culture, like on my mom's side, they wouldn't be called witches. They'd be like the men and women have different names. Like they would be healers or sorceress or a dragon man, or you know that person has a spirit in them of a god or a goddess or a force of nature that allows them to do more than the other people can, because they need that person in the village or the town or the city, and so on. So we do believe in that, but there's different words for it. But then it comes back down to that word for witch that in American and British English now means something else. But in some of these other countries, that word really, really, it doesn't mean a nasty lady. It doesn't mean, a feminist woman. It really means the creature that lives in the dark of the woods of feminine nature that hunts. This might be the best way I can describe that. So it's not,
Yeah.
Is it evil because it may want to eat you? Yeah, but it's not
Yeah.
evil. It's just the darkness of, it's the actual darkness, and not metaphorical, like poetic, she is the unknown until we explore her and then find she's beautiful. No, it's like in the legend, it's always a scary, horrible thing, like with the werewolves and the vampires.
No, you're right. In Tibetan, we call them mamos,
Yeah.
disruptive
Mhm.
forces that are wild, untamable. They will not submit to the Dharma. They will try to disrupt your ceremonies. We actually make offerings to them. One of the things I really love about Buddhist technology, ceremonial technology, is that you make offerings to everybody, even the ones who don't like you.
Right.
So you make offerings to the Buddhas and the
Right.
teachers and the lineage, and then you also make offerings to the landlords, we call them, like the jalpos, the kings of the
Right.
land, who just happen to correspond to the 4 directions. And then we also make offerings to like the mamos, the nagas, and any land spirit that might want to come along and mess with us. I think you're right. You know, when we're speaking in English, word witch, it has these certain layers of meaning. And that's where I was really coming from. But I think
Oh,
you're
yeah.
also, what you're speaking to is really powerful in that in various different cultures where there wasn't that other connotation, there is
Right. Like,
kind of
who was the person you and Eddie said earlier? I know I met him as well too. Shay? She?
David She. Yeah, David
Right.
She.
Yeah, she.
That he explains that the word shaman that we've used in English, not I don't feel that anyone aimed to be disrespectful. You were taught, well, this is the word for the spiritual leader in a more, like,
Nature-based.
nature-based, people who really live in the country. And that word was applied to even like where we come from, the leaders, the people who go into trance and do the spiritual work. So I don't know if it was truly everyone meant it in a terrible way. I don't think people had that intention behind it. But if all of a sudden there's this move now to only use that specific word to mean one specific thing that means so much to that culture's belief, then what also happens with the word witch? Like that's kind of like the shaman thing, and the word, like we live in this very bizarre technical age of word policing, and not everybody knew that this was a bad word. It was the word they knew for things like, I know this is a water bottle, but someone who's thoroughly offended by water bottle is like, that is agua receptacle. Well, I didn't know that because I just knew it was a water bottle.
Yeah.
That's my new magical name, Agua Receptica.
One of the things that in the conversations with David, and for anybody that didn't see the show, they can always go back to our archives and watch the show. We've had multiple conversations about it. It's his mission is not to change, people. It's not to change everything.
Right.
It's just for them to be aware
Yeah.
and utilizing the word correctly, and more like our show, just for educational purposes. He's not trying to, it's not his mission to and cancel everybody that uses the word shaman,
No, and that's not what I was implying either. I'm just curious to know what happens to the W word, because I thought it was interesting that Yeshe had said someplace capital W and small w to determine two different things.
Well, initiatory craft versus self-identified non-lineage holding. And I think it's messy too. I don't think, like I said, this isn't my PR nightmare to solve.
Oh, no. I think it was intelligent. I think it was very cool that you brought that up and said that like that.
I do think that we who practice the things, whatever it is that we practice, we who practice these things have a responsibility to educate for sure. And I love that David is out there educating. I'm actually super grateful, because that's something that I feel a lot of anthropologists really dropped the ball on in academia. They kept just labeling it shaman, and it became endemic. And then it's really hard to root that out and re-explain it at that point. But I feel that as this movement is like really growing, kind of crazy growing right now, so much that it's actually scary. And I think we all kind of feel that, like, this is a little scary, hang on. But I also know I saw it coming. I remember saying to a group that I belonged to a number of years ago, get ready, because 5 years from now, what we think of as our little world of magic is going to be 5 times the size.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like 50 times. And then it's like 500 times the size now. That was like, so we're watching it happen. But I do think those of us who were here the whole time, our job to just keep talking about it together like this, educating. I wanted to just say something really for a minute, because Jim is in the comments. He made such a powerful statement. He said, and Melis answered, Eddie answered and said, this is a whole other topic we should discuss at the time, but that he brings up Nick Nevin in Scottish. It means fairy queen, a lot more pleasant, has a more pleasant connotation through today's lens. But people back then feared the fae. And so, I think, whether it's, so we're talking about the wee folk, the fae, the witch, the mamo, whatever it is, I think we are still fundamentally talking about that thing that is both powerful and dangerous. And you don't want to get on its bad side.
Right, and that's
it would be okay if that's how we think about it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, a lot of people within the community with education, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's great, of saying, well, witches, we dance around trees and we do this, the whole love and light thing, and I'm sitting there going, no, bitch, fear me. Because instead of doing that, and the reason why I say it that way, people are like, oh, but you're teaching the wrong information, and it should be about love and light, and but it's not. The universe is not like that. The world is not like that. And being a witch for me is taking out the religious aspect of it, is connecting with it, being on that thread to be able to understand the balances that are out there, the good, the bad, the dark, the white, and all that. We don't use colors necessarily, but yes, you should fear me, because I'm more in tune to be able to make something happen and change. And I'm very proud of that because of the work I've done.
Owning the word witch is individualized. This is, and we're very grateful for the evolution of all this that has happened with modern day witchcraft. But we also have to think that there is ignorance out there. And yes, Eddie, there is so much the yin and yang. And we have to the polarity, we have to acknowledge that as well. But I own the word witch because it's like I said to Yeshe, spiritual DNA. It was something innate in me since I was a boy.
Yes.
Just like Kuan Yin, when it drove me. It was something that I knew that it was part of my being.
Mhm.
And I had to find out for myself. And James, in my culture, Hispanic, there's bruja y brujo. And so that hasn't have the negative connotation that would witch have.
Mhm.
And I understand that in other cultures, Laurie Cabot professes that the witch is pertaining to the British Isles, and obviously so, but still, witchcraft is involved in many cultures, not necessarily with that term.
Right.
And so that's something that it's part of our psyche, our spiritual DNA as we evolve forward. And you're right, Yeshe. This is just our little world is going to multiply in the few. I'll be an old man. I'll be a sage when that happens.
Yeah. I have
Which
to
I
say,
already am.
well, you're a wise man at any age, right? I think one thing is that when you were just saying, when you just said, as a boy, you remember that. And I had a story pop into my mind I want to share. My second grade teacher, Mrs. Martin, calling my mom and saying, I need you to come in and talk with me because your daughter has been walking around telling everyone that she's a witch at my Catholic school. I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through 12th grade.
Mhm.
I graduated with the same 41 kids, practically the same 41 kids I started kindergarten with. I'm still friends with a lot of them.
That's
They
cool.
they kind of get it. They kind of don't get it. They're always like, well, we knew you were different, but I remember I went in with it was Lori Cabot. I saw her on the Phil Donahue show when I was 7 years old. And I walked up to touch the television because I wanted to be close to her. Because what she was saying, I didn't, Phil Donahue, you know how he was. He was kind of a ball buster. He would be like, well, and he had to like kind of goad people on. And every year, you know, every time she went on there, she would, for the sake of the religion, subject herself to his sneering way of being
Sure.
so that she could sit there in her full regalia, completely magical, sort of terrifying, and so dignified, and represent the earth and the voice of the goddess. And I swear to God, 7 years old, I walk up to the television and I put my hand on the television and I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And then I started going into second grade and telling them I was a witch. And I still am with a small W. I actually have never initiated into Wicca. That's not been one of the paths that I followed, although I'm going to be 50 next year. And that's the year I told myself 20 years ago, I'll do that when I'm 50. So I'm thinking about that next step. If for whatever reason, it felt like that would be the right time for me. But I wanted to just say another thing, which is that, you know, as we're exploring all these terminologies and things like this, there's this element of cultural competency when we're traveling in various different lands where, you know, here in the US, we've become accustomed to our religious freedom. I mean, even to the point where we might be having, like you had that horrific experience of your coworker trying to slander your name and demean you, and I've certainly been through it. And you know, oh, and yeah, Jim says I'm now doing it at 46 after 30 plus years. We all have our, you know, our journey, I guess, with it. But when we go into places that they don't have religious freedom, the stark contrast between, like, not that I'm downplaying, please, you know, I hope it comes across right what I'm saying. Your experience, Alex, of having your coworker trying to slander you, but you had HR, you could go to them, you could produce your documentation, you could explain. They could tell the person to please stop doing that. And if it needed to escalate, I'm imagining that under our protection of our religious,
It went under investigation, and
yeah,
it was addressed. And now it's documented, and of course she's changed her tune.
right. And should it ever surface again, there's the documentation there, so proper steps could be taken to protect your religious freedom. But all it takes, there are still places, and you know, I recently did a ritual where we printed out all the names of everyone who's ever been, that we could find all over the world, of everyone who's ever been accused of witchcraft and killed. So all the names for the Americas, Western Europe, South America, Mexico, everywhere we found it. And it was hard to kind of find that information. But the thing that, as I was looking through, I then found this, you know, website that had them all listed, and that was really helpful. The thing that I noticed is that at a certain point in the list, it sort of stops, it slows down. The dates are really close together in like the 1600s, 13 through 16, 1700s. And then it kind of slows down in the 1800s, except for in one place, which is the African continent. And people are still being burned and killed, if just on the accusation there.
Correct.
And the names 2021, 2020, 2021, you know, like it, and whole families. This woman was accused, and so they killed her whole family. That kind of thing. And so in the ritual, this was part of the International Priestess Convocation in Crete last year that we did this ritual. I was assigned this ritual. I would have not chosen it for myself. It's a topic that I find really difficult, actually, is how were we going to honor those who had been persecuted properly, elevate them? So we had a cloth and we had the names written on the cloth, and we had a recording of the names that was read out loud. And what I did was I got someone to make this a red shawl, and it represented that mantle of blood that is worn by all of those ancestors. And what we did was we unraveled it. We passed it around and we unraveled the entire shawl. And then we took the threads and we each tied the thread onto our own wrists, asking for those ancestors to be at peace and for them, and that we would remember and that we would carry those names and that we would honor them. And I think that, what you're saying, Eddie, that really, kind of really knocked it home for me was saying, like, there are people who have had real consequences as a result of this. And when we go places in the world where that is still a risk for someone, there's no HR for them to go to.
No.
That the police will stand outside and guard the people who are killing you and your family.
True.
I think for us, I think one of the reasons that casual use of the term grates on us at an epigenetic level is because there's parts of us that remember and know the horror that can accompany that, and that can accompany being labeled that. And so I do want to say, like, as much as we're like laughing and talking and debating and everything, I really do take it seriously as well because of that. And because as I travel places, I don't always wear that label of witch. I don't always bring out the label of priestess. I have a friend, Orthodox Greek, met him, and he looks at me and he said, Madam, I don't want to presume your religion, but maybe you would be interested to learn more about our god Apollo of the light. And I said, I am a priestess of a goddess temple in California. And he shut the door so that we could actually talk. Because if anyone heard us talking, because he belongs to a secret society, because they still have to be secret. So there's just this perspective that I want to just like touch here, because I do think this term is a sensitive one for a lot of us and for lots of reasons. But I feel like in all this, I was able to say thank you to Laurie Cabot and thank you to the Cabot tradition for representing that dignity.
That's a wonderful story, and I'll pass it to Lori. She's now 90 years of age. So that's wonderful, Yeshe. I'm just excuse me for my little laughter because the ongoing in the background. But definitely I don't use the word witch, and I wanted to share a little story that happened to me today when I was in the cab. A nice lady was taking us from the airport to the hotel, and she was wanting to know where I was from and what I was doing here, and I told her, Parliament of World Religions. She says, so what is your denomination? And I said, you know what, my religion is love. I didn't want to mention Wicca, or go into the whole rhetoric of the religion, and just tell her my religion is love and my religion is humanity, and this is what it's about, because it is. It's about humanity. I'm evolving. I will be 90 years of age and I'm still learning.
Yes.
And so this is me here, hobnobbing with the elders, and seeing more than seeing the entire picture rather than a portion of it, and also learning and sharing my own gift, my own energy.
Yes. Yes. And how exciting for you to be there that first time. I've never been. I've always wanted to check it out. And
Yeah.
maybe in the future we'll try it. It sounds like a great, great opportunity to go, and it sounds like it's in the spirit of we're all here because whatever you believing in something is important.
Absolutely. And I even mentioned it to her. It's, religion is man-made and it's just a mere interpretation of our own spirituality. I think it's individualistic. What you relate to, and you grow and you learn and you evolve.
Yeah, I believe that's one of the things. It's like one of the principles of of our temple here is no matter how many things we belong to, every one of us is a religion of one, because how I do it and how you do it could be very different. And even when we're under the same umbrella, our experience of it is going to be so unique that, in fact, so unique that it's hard for us to even explain it sometimes.
Well, I
And
think
maybe we shouldn't always.
that's where I was gonna go. You know, the experiences you have in any religion is yours alone. You know, you have your dogma, you have your teachings, you have all of this other stuff um, that kind of keep you together as a community in a way. You know, whether it's witchcraft and it's within your coven or within a tradition, or if it's Christianity and it's within a certain sect of Christianity, that's the community aspect of it. But it's the experience and what ends up happening, especially within our realm of that the little bubble that we are in, is those personal experiences end up becoming put out to the world as fact, and that's where it causes some misunderstanding within the community, which rolls over to the outer community, and then people don't understand. You know, if you have an experience with a spirit or god or goddess or this, that, or the other, you know, shut up about it. Keep it to yourself. Talk about it amongst your little community, your coven, your own temple, things like that, because those are the people that are going to relate to it, because they're all under that same traditional sense, the same teachings, things like that. That's fine. But when you start putting it into books and going on YouTube and TikTok and you know, Aphrodite loves sugar cookies, you know, and everybody has to give an offering of sugar cookies because she said so. That was maybe just for you.
Right.
That's the experience with it. And I think that's what's most important that needs to happen to be able to change how we're viewed from the outside, but also how we permeate to the outside world and not sound kooky all the time.
It's a hard thing, because without people speaking in public about their experiences, there's no way that you don't think you're crazy. But at the same time, when you see something and you go, oh, I connect there, it gives you permission maybe to explore further. But at the same time, when you've got people making a dogma out of something that's fundamentally not supposed to be dogmatic, or what I find very difficult as a historian is what I have to tell you, like, I had to really learn hard how wiki fandom things on the internet about deities will present as if they're actual historical articles.
Yes.
And a number of times I'll be like reading something, I'm like, wow, that's interesting thing about Hecate. I've never read that anywhere before. Like, where is that like coming from? What is that? And then it's like, oh, this is like they're actually talking about a character in a video game that they're playing.
Right.
I had no idea. That was like a big learning experience, was learning that now that they make God's names into video game characters, and then people write whole like fandom type articles about those video game characters, and then those look like actual articles. It's like, oh, so
you even get that though in the more serious websites, you know, outside of fandom and things like that. You know, the misinformation. She's the biggest one that has them. I think the most misinformation.
Who's that? Oh,
having the most misinformation that's out there. You know, yes, people have their own experiences. People have, you know, when you know she comes or whatever, they have any god, you know, any of the gods are going to come to how whatever's comfortable for you. That's just how it works, I think. You know, but it doesn't make it fact. You know, have those experiences. I always say double check your experiences. You know, yeah, everybody's always talking about sources. I'm a big person when it comes to sources with things, but you know, source your own experience.
But do you guys think this hold on. Let me finish the thought out. It's a little thorough, and it's everything I say is from personal experience, so I own it. It's nothing I read. This topic that we've touched on here, the reading thing, the academic thing, there are bibliophiles that absolutely love to read. I'm one of these people. You put the cereal box in front of me, I'm going to read the ingredients. I'm going to read anything you put in front of me. I like to read. There's a lot of people who like to read, and they just can't stop. So I understand that. I'm one of them too. But coming from a completely different place, this is going to sound funny, and I'm aiming to make it sound more ignorant than it is. Coming from the family and cultures I came from, it back in those days, it was a little more tight knit. It wasn't as completely diverse as it would be now. I come from a little city that's a mile square. We pretty much all came from the same place. We all went to Catholic school. We had to all know our Catholic saints, but because it was also part of our heritage, we also had to know all of our classical gods and goddesses. So we had to know the history of the parts of the world we were from and everything contained in it. It was just the way, just like every other culture does to their kids. They want you to be proud. They want you to know where you come from. This is your thing. We had the Madonna in the front of the house. We had Venus in the back garden. There was a very blurred line as to were they two separate things or were they the same thing. It was a lot of fun. So I'm a kid that grows up like that, telling, the nuns and the priests and my principal, Sister Marcia, no, there's not a Trinity, there's 12 gods, they live on Mount Olympus. They put up with me. They didn't beat me. They didn't tell me horrible things. We debated. It was a lot of fun. I thought it was terrible at the time, but looking back in hindsight, these people were pretty cool with somebody like that. Now, what I see now in the age of the internet, when friends of mine in the suburbs introduced me to Wicca, I didn't even know what they were saying. They were saying it so fast. They were like, I'm Wiccan. So me and my other friend, my best friend at the time, who's 100% Spanish, she's from Puerto Rico, we're like, what are they saying they're wicked? Or maybe this is some suburban slang. We don't know what they mean. But they were saying they were wicked. We never heard of this before. We knew what paganism was. We knew who the gods were, the cultural, classical kind of thing. And so when they introduced it, I remember thinking, oh, this is kind of cool. This reminds me of what we kind of believe. We just have different names for these dates. And sometimes it's a saint, sometimes it's a person or a spirit. But my point with all this comes down to, in this day and age now of a pocket computer in everyone's back pocket, I remember debating book readers back in the day, and those were good debates because we all read the same books. Now, when I converse and debate people, they pull out their iPhones, their smartphones, or blah, 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 whatever that tells them everything. And you're right. These bizarre conversations start happening because I don't know if I'm talking about a comic book hero in a Marvel movie or a video game character in a video game. So I know that all these things are still inspired by these classical themes. But the funny thing that does come down to then, I understand now. Like I said, I'm aiming this to be more ignorant for a purpose. What happens to somebody who's like, I don't understand why, where are you from? Oh, your background is like Irish and German and English, like a typical, like an American, like before the immigrants came over in 1800s. So your English, your descent is all this. How do you even know or want to pray to, when those Venus, the goddess of love, like where's even your interest? Like that's not even your part of the world. I know now better, but it becomes a funny thing as to how and where can this stop now? Because Wicca in the 70s and 80s already took the Greco-Roman deities and turned them into almost comic book characters. And then as things progressed, now they are comic book characters. Now they are video game characters. So where does the line then divide? Because I do see people say, halt, wait a second. Hakati is not a video game. But then I used to be the one to stop and go, what is this? You're Hecate. Okay, because we used to pronounce her name Hecate. And I'm like, why does she look like she went to Hot Topic and looks like she hangs out in the vampire clubs in the Bowery? Like, you know, like our stories say that she was supposed to be seen in the dark. So she had golden hair. Didn't mean she was blonde. Meant she had golden hair. And she was very almost translucent, almost like a ghost, very white. She wore white. Like, what is this whole Gothic thing? But they took this Hollywood popularized Gothic image and stamped it on her. And now I can't convince anybody else otherwise because that's all they know. So it does become a funny thing as the road continues to keep going to say, halt, wait a second, this isn't it. But then what's going to happen to those video game players when whatever the metaverse or whatever comes next? And they're like, Hecate, Hakati is this now. Like, it gets wild, right?
This is something I have actually had a couple of conversations about because I think there's two Hecates. There's actual Hecate and there's meme Hecate. And
I like
I'm
that.
not sure as a human being, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know her.
Oh, right. This is all the fun conversation.
No, but what I mean is like, I don't know her intent.
Right.
Is meme Hecate her way of keeping her name in popular culture,
right,
in this world, and or like Sarita, the thing you were just describing, Sarita calls that dark fluff. She doesn't like dark fluff Hecate,
right?
You know, and she says, you know, well, and she also is always trying to help people understand that even though they see Hecate as a crone, that she's actually not a crone. She's actually more Artemisian and like more of a maiden. And so, but I think, okay, let's say we've got, you know, Lady Pixie Moondrip, who is worshiping meme Hecate as the crone right now and starts a coven about it. And they are doing it. They are doing it to it. They believe it. They're pouring their, you know, they're pouring their Red Bulls. They're like having their thing. Tell me, 2,000 years from now, could that, if that continued, would meme Hecate be real Hecate?
Right. Exactly.
So I'm kind of like, it's okay if that's where you want to go. It's not where I go. I'm a historian. I look to the books. I look to the things. I look to 3 sources of corroboration for any vision I have. Like I have my metric, you know, for it established over time. But I kind of, as an Aquarius rising,
okay,
I kind of like the idea that meme Hecate could port herself into a goddess the same way Isis, a relatively obscure goddess of the throne of the pharaoh, became the lady of 10,000 names, worshipped all over the world.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
She pulled herself up by her golden sandal straps and went out there and did it. And maybe there is a room for the future for these memes to take on some relevance. I don't know. Maybe it's when our brains mix with the AI. I don't know. Like, you know, I'm joking, but I'm kind of like, I'm not joking. Like,
I know.
I think there's, you know, there's room for this futuristic interpretation, the dance of futuristic interpretation to have relevance. But I don't personally feel like I need to participate in that. That's a younger woman's game for me.
Right.
I'm with you.
Well,
I think within the generation flow that we have here in our room tonight, we were just all born because I take it we're all very close in age and, you know, here and there. We were all born under very romantic stars, you know, those generational stars we all share in common, which are those, you know.
That's very true. Our generational stars are both innovative and traditional. It's
true.
Both.
It is true.
We see the egregore to deity highway. Says in the comments. I love that, from the egregore to deity highway.
That's just it. You know, there is something about that, the creating an egregore, you know, through things like the meme Hecate, you know. Yes, well, could it eventually, is it her way of getting through to new people? And I kind of look at it in that way. You know, for me, like you, I'm more of that traditionalist and looking to historical and you know, Yes, do I follow it all completely that way? No, because I've had my own experiences. I've changed things. She's actually taught me more through those experiences that I double checked and fact checked and went, holy shit, they've been doing this for thousands of years. But the thing is that sometimes I look at it and I go, maybe the meme Hecate is a way of weeding through everyone to get deep down to those devotional ones, because they'll question, like, oh, well, let's say Sarita does a post, right, which she does often, about how it's not a crone and this, that, and the other, and somebody sees it and goes, oh, but this is how she comes, and then learns that, and then kind of changes direction to that more traditional sense. So it's almost like this meme Hecate, and that's what I was kind of saying before. The gods and the goddesses are going to come to whoever, whenever, however that you're going to relate to. And if this is what's the popular view,
You just said it, popular culture,
right?
and it's individualistic. So yes, there's some that says that she's not a mother or she's not a goddess, and they have that interpretation
Right.
of and you're right, James. I know her as Hecate, not Hecate. You know what I mean? But tomato, tomato,
Right, right,
potato,
right.
potato. So I don't know. So
I
each,
think the Roman pronunciation is Hecate, and I think the Greek pronunciation is Hecate.
Yeah.
It's the ah versus
Right.
the e.
Mhm.
It's a Roman
yeah.
versus Greek thing, but it's both, right? But I think looking here that Luis says plays and myths. We can't confuse the ancient plays and myths with religious veneration. They weren't always the same thing. Having said that, though, the ancient plays and myths did grant us the space to hold on to the gods in popular culture. And yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I do think that, you mentioned my altar before, Alex. You mentioned that you liked this altar. In Buddhism, though, we don't build the altar because the deity needs a beautiful altar. They don't care. We build the beautiful altar in Buddhism in case somebody who hasn't yet encountered the Dharma encounters the Dharma through the beauty of the altar. That's why we build it. We build it because the art of building the altar makes us better people, not because the deity needs us to build it.
No,
Right? The
and
deity is
it's
sort of doing whatever they
and
want.
also we're full of aesthetics, and we're visual creatures.
Right.
So of course that's part of it, one part of it, but also they become tools.
Exactly. A locus. You
Hmm.
know, this is a place where a portal where I can connect with Guanya, and I just sit right down and boom, it's there.
Your
It's happening.
sacred space,
Yeah.
correct?
But it's for me, she would be here. I mean, if I were a Tibetan monk in the middle of the province of Kham, where all I have is my one little bowl sitting in it, a shack, and that she would be there too, without all the
Well, the altar, your space, the altar becomes like your holy of holies. It's just that space that's holding that, but doesn't mean you can't find her in a blade of grass or.
right.
It's funny because when I made my altar, I made it out of oak. I had a carpenter who actually made the constructed a credenza, where I would then have the black and white, checkerboard, and it would be a cabot. Even before cabot, I wanted that yin yang, the polarity in its place and everything. So I had it designed, and when I did, I went to Salem and I found a lock, and it was the Kuan Yin lock, and it was her in the center of the lock, and it was just perfect for her to be um actually in that credenza.
The reproductions of those temple locks are so fantastic. I know the ones you're talking about. Sometimes you see them also with Ganesh or Green Tara.
Oh,
And
and the lion,
yeah,
and I've
and
seen them with the
also,
lion in Saudi Arabia.
yeah,
That's the first time I saw those locks, and I was like, wow, and they were asking for $90, and the guy who was escorting us, he said, don't get it, don't get it, it's overpriced. And
That's
I got the Kuan Yin lock for like $30.
yeah. And then it seals your shrine for you.
It does.
I love that.
It just, because it brings me back to that joyful, boyish, wonder that I
Yes.
had when I saw Kuan Yin, and I remember the little, I bought a little statue that you take the hand and
Yes.
you do a petition, and you take
Yes.
that little hand and you hide it somewhere, and if when she grants it, you put it
Put the
back.
hands back. Yes. I love that. I actually think it's great to have Guan Yin as the guardian of your shrine because, in the Tibetan pantheon and in the Buddhist pantheon, you've got the wrathful deities that are like scary. They've got fangs, the big face, and they seem like scary. They're meant to. But the scariest ones are the peaceful ones because they just kind of bear down on you.
Correct.
Like there's no escape from the compassion of Guan Yin. And the reality is you will tear yourself apart before you'll get into that altar. If you're going with, if someone were trying to access your shrine and they don't belong there. It's not that they need like there to scare them away. What they need is to stand there, and as they're trying to fiddle with the lock, to have that feeling of, this is the worst thing I've ever done. Bear down on them until it tears them apart. It's also compassion. People think of compassion the wrong way. They think compassion means something like pity or sympathy or
No,
softness.
no,
Passion is a force, and it will just bear down on you. So
correct.
I love that you chose that for your shrine. You couldn't ask for a more powerful
I
protector.
did. It just called out, and I knew that that would be it. Even though we through the Cabot tradition, we do have the Celtic mythology,
Right.
and we pretty much go through the gods and goddesses, but Kuan Yin having her, it's a personal
Yes.
choice.
And she makes friends wherever she goes,
She
all
does.
across everywhere. People are like, well, she's not like with us, but she's with us. She's kind of like that. One of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen actually was in a temple in the Sichuan province in Chengdu. When I was there in 2014 and then in 2016. And I went to the shrine both times. It's actually one of the oldest nunneries it's the oldest nunnery in the Sichuan province. And it's next door to a temple complex in Old Town Chengdu. And you go in and there's a crystal carved, a guanyin carved out of quartz crystal that sits in a shrine. And she's
Beautiful.
not the biggest one they have. They have other statues that are brass, that are larger, etc. But the way that the light comes through her, she's emanating. And I'll never forget when I walked in there, this was 2 years before I started my practice. Um, I started my Guanyin practice in 2016. When I moved here to Mount Shasta, I moved to Dunsmuir, and I saw a vision of her in the waterfall near my house. And actually, that's why I moved here. Was I said to my husband, I need to live walking distance from this waterfall. And in 2016, I started my practice. And as of April of this year, our Sangha has accumulated over 1 million recitations of her mantras, working since 2016. And, so going before that and seeing that crystal statue, it just activated something. And I know what you mean when you say that purity. And I see that we're just at the end of our time. We could have talked like for another 3 hours. Because we're just at the end of our time. I just wanted to say thank you so much for
No,
having
thank you. It was a wonderful show. That I guess now would be anything that you want to promote, what you're doing, where you're going, what all this fun stuff that you do that I'm
Oh,
jealous of, and I'll live through your pictures. Uh,
Oh, thank you. Yes, and maybe you'll come with me one of these times. So I have one more seat for Turkey, September 20th to October 3rd. I'm looking for one more person. Can be anybody. It doesn't have we our temple is a goddess temple, but it can be anybody. It doesn't have to be a woman or, it can be anyone. That's one thing. And it's on the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple website. We also have coming up in November the Go with Goddess Symposium. It's going to be a half day a symposium of priestesses from our temple talking about sacred travel. Priestess Reina is going to talk about ancestral pilgrimage. Priestess Bria is going to talk about traveling with infants and small children and how to pilgrimage with your kids. I'm going to talk about cultural compassion and competency. And Priestess Mia is going to talk about becoming a digital nomad. It's free, it's open to anyone. If you go into the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple website and you look at our offerings, you'll see Go with Goddess. It's there. We have an annual Cosmogenetrix symposium every spring where we have different people coming in online or in person presenting on topics. Our topic for 2024 is Urania, Queen of Stars. And we're soliciting right now proposals for presentations about goddesses related to the cosmos, astrology, ancient aliens. If you want to bring it, we're here for it. We'll listen. Whatever your connection is, we're interested in hearing about that. And then I do priestess training and I do Sybil training. I do two-year trainings. I do priestess training myself and priestess Devana, and I do Sybil training, and those start in January. And all that can be found at MountShastaGoddessTemple.com. I also have a shop, The Sacred Well. It's been in existence since 2006. sacredwell.com, and you can shop online. You can book readings with me. It is 15,000. I've done over 15,000 readings. I've been a professional tarot reader full time for 20 years. It's my one main job that doesn't go away no matter what else I do. Everything else that I've been like, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to change my career. I'm going to do that. No, I'm still a tarot reader. So that's what I do. And I actually do 22 different forms of divination, all different kinds. So there's something there for everybody. So that's me. And
Bravo.
I loved being here so much with you all. Love your show.
Thank you.
So grateful for this time together.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
This
for
has
having
been a
us.
pleasure.
Same for me.
Yeah.
And we'll meet. We'll see each other again somewhere.
Yes,
We
no
definitely
doubt.
will.
The road will definitely do that for us.
Definitely it
And
will.
thank you to everyone in the comments who was so engaged tonight. I only got to talk to a half of you, but thank you so much.
Yeah, we got so involved. I mean, we forgot our little break. We forgot a whole bunch of things just talking. But it is what it is, and and all of that. You welcome to stay on, or you can bump off. That's up to you. We're just gonna do our ending little closing thing. You're welcome to stay. That's up to you.
I have to run because I have a ceremony to attend, but thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
was great.
Many blessings to you.
Thank you, my love.
Ciao,
Take care.
ciao. We'll talk soon.
Ciao, ciao. Bye. And
Ciao.
Eddie, you have to take me out because I don't know how.
Okay, I will do that. Well,
Thank you.
I can lock you out, and then you should be able to.
There you go.
There she goes. Yeah.
There she goes.
Oh, I
There
love that
she goes
song. What's
again.
Tal something? What was that back Tal?
I don't remember. I remember
Yeah,
the song.
yeah.
I don't remember who did it.
No, he was a the son of a very good musician, Tal something. There she goes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great song.
So, Alex, anything on your little agenda before?
Just whoever is interested and to know more about the Parliament of World Religions, I'm going to be here for a week. I'm also going to check out, Chicago. I haven't been here since 1986, when my profession was actually textile designer. And I
Wow.
was here for a trunk show, several
Very
trunk
cool.
shows in hand-painted silks back then.
Ooh.
And this is before nursing. And so this is definitely a wonderful chance for me to soak up Chicago and see, and see the Parliament of World Religions with so many people.
Bravo.
And Eddie, like you said, not everything is love and light, and be a light unto darkness, so you may be the balance of the universe.
And he brings back his famous saying.
Well put.
James, what's up with you going on?
Let's see. Well, big news. I will be reopening the Osset Gypsy Metaphysical Emporium in September. More details to come about that. I'm looking forward to seeing people again in a space that I could provide uniquely all my own. Still working away on the re-edition of the Osset Gypsy Tarot deck that will come out in autumn of 2024. Still putting the last final touches on the other tarot-inspired teaching modality project that I'll probably in our next show be able to talk about at that point, because all of these things have the deadline of this Friday before I go away on a family vacation. We're taking a cruise down to the Caribbean, of which I can't wait. Can't wait to get into the ocean. I miss the ocean. Doing this show with you good fellows. What else is going on? Well, let's see. I don't know. I'm going to be hosting this Witches Ball down in Cocoa Beach on Friday the 13th in October. I'll be back down at Islands of Adventure in Lost Continent doing readings again around that same time. I'm waiting to hear back if I'll be book signing and doing readings at the Allentown New Age Expo the first week of September. And then I will be at Newt's, the Northwest Tarot Symposium, the last week of September into early October, doing book signings and doing readings and haunting the people there. So a few things here and there.
Oh, that's a lot, actually.
And tomorrow I'll be at Riverside Treasures in Milford, New Jersey, seeing clients. There's 2 spots left, so if anybody out there wants to come get a reading, a tarot card reading in person, there's 2 spots left. Get in touch with me, and I'll be more than happy to book you.
Awesome. All right. So anyway, my normal things, my ending of the show, right, is our announcements. Our next episode is September 9th with special guest Patty Negri. Check her out. Look at the bios. She's been everywhere. The topic right now, kind of thinking, is probably within the lines of paranormal. We'll see where that kind of flickers through. But other than that, you can find This Old Witch podcast on Spreaker, which went down tonight, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. You can watch us live on Facebook.com, This Old Witch, which also went down tonight, or on YouTube.com/This Old Witch podcast, which was perfectly fine. It looks like we lost Alex.
Alex went down.
Yeah, Alex went down too. But anyway, remember to hit the like and subscribe wherever you're catching us. And if you love This Old Witch podcast and the guests that we bring you, there are many ways you can help support the show with our lovely, where are they? Lovely merch. There you go. You can scan that code. You can do all that. You can donate to the show. Look at that. That's another one of those things. And you can also advertise with us. If you have a business or event, you can help support the show and reach over 200,000 people worldwide. Yes, that's how many listeners we do have. For information, visit oldwitchpodcast.wordpress.com or email oldwitch.podcast@gmail.com. I think I said that twice, but I don't know.
Maybe somebody needed to hear it twice.
There you go. We usually have our little commercials, but other than that, we will. Right, that's it. Yeah, we're good. So we're
wrapped.
See you next month on September 9th.
See you all then.
All night. See if you have it ready.